have a sesh on net profit margin. So net profit margin, NPM, is found on the income statement. So important. And the formula for net profit margin is net profit divided by your revenue times by 100, because the answer will be in a percentage form. So let's try and calculate the net profit margin for Chopsesh in 2020. So we've got an income statement here, and you can see that they've made revenue, or turnover that it's sometimes called, of 200,000. And you can see that their net profit, which is going to go on the top half of the formula, is 25. That's 25,000 because of the 3 zeros. So therefore, 25 divided by 200, so 25 divided by 200 times by 100 will come to 12.5%. 12.5%. But what does that mean? That essentially means for every £1 of sales, which will be in the revenue or the turnover, every £1 of sales, 12.5p of that is your net profit, your bottom line that it's sometimes called. So let's look at more details of net profit margin. So the most important thing is, number one, is the higher the net profit margin, the better. You want it to be as high as possible. Secondly, ultimately it says how good your business is at converting sales into profit. And thirdly, it helps inform management of several things. Number one is that you can compare your net profit margin to previous years and see if there's been a positive or negative trend. And if there's been a negative trend, maybe you need to establish why that's the case so you can stop it. And also, you can compare yourself to your rivals in the same industry as you, to see what their net profit margin is. And if it's higher than you, you can see what they're doing better than you and that you need to replicate, if possible. So, fourthly, is that the net profit margin is really, it's the big boys, because it's looking at everything. It's looking at your direct costs, being your cost of sales. It's looking at your indirect costs, being your operating expenses, and it's looking at your interest from your loans, which is the difference between operating profit and net profit. It's looking at everything. It's looking at your revenue and your turnover, and it's slicing away all those different types of costs, direct costs, indirect costs, and interest and taxes. Slicing it all away so you can really see what the overall profit is. And the fifth point to be aware of is that your net profit margin is always going to be lower than your gross profit margin, simply because net profit margin is at the bottom of the income statement, whether gross profit margin is much higher up the income statement. And for that reason, only direct costs have been taken out to come to your gross profit. And therefore your gross profit margin is going to be a bigger number, a bigger percentage. So remember that. And the last thing is that the net profit margin that we've calculated here of 12.5%, for example, well, that's very, very useful for different stakeholders. It could be internal stakeholders, such as management, as we've discussed here, compared to previous years, compared to your rivals in the same industry. But it's also important to external stakeholders. It could be potential shareholders looking to invest in a company in a certain industry, and then they're looking at the net profit margins of all the different businesses that exist in that industry and seeing which is the highest could be the way they're judging who they're going to invest in. And if your net profit margin comes out the highest in that industry, well, then they may invest in you. So it can be useful to external stakeholders too. Remember, this is net profit margin. There's a video on gross profit margin. It's there right now. Hello. And I'll see you at the next video.